This is session 49 of the Podcast Engineering Show.
Oh, forget it.
That's right. Yeah. Yes. Yes, it's all positive today. Welcome to the Podcast Engineering Show. I'm happy you are able to join me right now. My name is Chris Curran. I produce podcasts for the likes of Forbes and Dun & Bradstreet, as well as select business authors and companies. Every week on this show, we really talk shop about the audio engineering side of podcast production. So we don't get into the listeners and the downloads and the marketing and social media. We don't talk about any of that. It's all about the sound quality. It's all about the production. I actually have a background in the music business, audio engineering, and I worked on a bunch of albums and have a bunch of album credits, and that was all very cool. But when I entered podcasting about 5 years ago, I realized that most podcasters, and even some podcast producers, they don't really know anything about audio, like the fundamentals of audio engineering. So that's where this show comes in, because I'm able to help bring you knowledge and experience, as well as I interview, podcast producers and other experts in the industry. And so we go through their equipment and their workflow and their processing and their software and plugins, all the technical stuff. And that's what we do every episode, except for this one. This one is just going to be me and Barry. Barry's the maintenance guy in my old building. You ready to go, Barry?
Yeah, oh yeah.
I know you are. You're always ready to go. And this episode is being released on March 23rd, and Podcast Engineering School actually starts on April 4th. I've decided to do the whole program online so you can experience it and enroll and participate right from wherever you are, which is awesome. So anyway, podcastengineeringschool.com. That's all the details are there. There's still time to sign up. The actual pricing goes up on April 1st, so you still have some time there. Today is just going to be me, as I mentioned, and we're going to talk about a bunch of topics. First of all, I have to say right off the bat, yesterday I recorded session number 50. That's right, this is 49, but I recorded session number 50 with Roy Stegman yesterday, and at the very beginning of our recording, I got all excited and I went off about how that was the first episode with my new microphone, and my new microphone is a vintage RE20, which I purchased from Mark Johansson at Podfest, actually, about a month ago. And I just went off. I got all excited, and I was, I think I was directly speaking to Mark. Anyway, this episode is actually the first one with the new mic. I forgot that I was going to be switching the order and all that. But this is my new vintage RE20, and I actually spent, since recording yesterday, session 50 with Roy, I actually spent some time tweaking my settings even more. So I think it sounds really good on this episode, but on episode 50, it'll still sound really good, and probably in post-production I'll tweak it up so it sounds awesome too. But anyway, there will be a difference, and it's interesting. I wonder if you can hear the difference. But I guess you'll have to wait a week to find out, because my conversation with Roy Stegman is coming out next week. And yeah, I'm really happy to have this new microphone. I was using a newer RE20, or a modern RE20. I think the cutoff was, Mark told me the cutoff is somewhere in the late 80s. Any of the RE20s that were made previously to the late 80s are the vintage RE20s, and they actually sound a little better. Anything made since then, it's very similar, but there's some slight differences. And I think the mid-range, specifically the upper mid-range frequencies, I think in the vintage one, in this one, are a little smoother. Something about the newer RE20, it just didn't sound completely accurate. And by the way, we are totally splitting hairs here. The new RE20 is a great mic, period. It is. It's better than almost every other mic that you can buy. But the difference between the vintage RE20 is very slight. And anyway, guys like me who are really, into the audio engineering side of this is what we do. This is what we talk about. That's why I bought this mic. So anyhow, at Podfest, it was cool hanging out with Mark and Roy and all kinds of other people. My good friend Mike Helms. So many people. Chris Krimitsos. Podfest was in Orlando. It was in February, which was last month. It was just awesome. This is just one of the best events you'll ever attend. So they're doing it next year. I think it's in the end of February again in Orlando. So this Podfest has become one of the two sort of must-go events in the world of podcasting. Podfest, of course, being one of them, and the other one, of course, being Podcast Movement, which is going to be in August in Anaheim, which I'm definitely going. I may have a booth there as well. I may want to have Podcast Engineering School have a booth, and I'm pondering that. I'm not sure if that's going to work, but the online course that starts on April 4th is going to be 14 hours of training on the internet, and if that's the model that people want, then I'll probably do that again later this year. And if I do it again later this year, maybe I can go to Podcast Movement and have a booth and hopefully get, at least a handful of people to sign up for the course. So then that will pay for my expenses at Podcast Movement. I'm still trying to figure all that out. All this marketing and stuff it's not easy for me. Hand me any piece of audio and I know what to do. But ask me how to market an event or ask me what people want. And I have ideas and I think I know what the right thing is to do, but then it just doesn't work sometimes. And then I don't know why. It's crazy. So Podfest was just awesome. They actually previewed the Messengers documentary. It's a podcasting documentary made by Chris Krimitsos and a bunch of other people. Neil and Dave Jackson and a bunch of people were working on it, and we actually got to see most of it. 90% of it was done at Podfest. We got to see it, and it's funny. I really hope this documentary blows up because there's a lot of podcasters in it, including Dave Jackson and Glenn the Geek and many others, and it's so funny. If this documentary sort of blows up a little bit, then they're going to be like little mini rock stars. Like, you know what I mean? They might be able to get onto like the bigger talk shows if this thing blows up, which I hope it does. I really hope it does. So, as I mentioned, this is not going to be a long episode, but just kind of some updates and some new stuff that I got. Next week, we'll be back with Roy Stegman, as I mentioned. I just bought the Zoom H6. Now, I did some research here, so here's the reason I bought it. I am going to be, this year, going to at least 3 or 4 conferences where I'm going to be recording audio in different forms. It could just be audio, just standing there with a mic on the conference floor and talking to people. Mostly, I'm probably going to be setting up some mics with some boom arms and actually allowing my clients to sit there with a guest and sort of almost record an episode on site, maybe at one of the booths on the conference floor. And I don't know how else I might record. So I was thinking like, okay, if I'm going to record multi-track on site, because it would be so helpful if you're going to record 2 or more microphones on site, that you record them on separate tracks. So that way you can process them separately later. And especially if one person's talking, you can even mute the other mic. Just turn it off. And that will decrease the background noise a lot. So recording multi-track for me especially is just a must. I must do that. I'm not going to go to any live event and have three or 4 microphones and record it all into stereo live, because it's going to capture all the background noise from all 3 or 4 microphones. And then once you have it all recorded in one signal, it's hard to remove that noise later, or near impossible actually. So I'm thinking if I'm going to record multi-track, then I have to, bring my computer with my audio interface. And those two things are, fragile. I don't want to travel with them. Like if I was to travel with them, I would want them like in a backpack that's in my lap. But then, of course, you'd have to bring the microphones and the boom arms and all this stuff. And then I was like thinking to myself, this is a nightmare, because I mean, it's fragile stuff. And I don't know. I never want to take my studio apart and travel with it, especially on a plane. If it's in your car, that's one thing. I can put anything in a car and drive and keep it safe and all that. But if you're on a plane and the bag's in your lap and you might have to put the bag in the overhead or you may have to check in a bag and put it underneath the airplane. And man, that's a whole nother level of risk. So I was thinking to myself, how can I record multi-track and keep it small and safe? And I was thinking about that for like weeks. And then all of a sudden it hit me. The Zoom H6. This is like a little handheld digital recorder, and it has an attachment. Well, first of all, the top of it has, it's sort of like you can buy different attachments for the top of it. So the regular, XY microphone, the little, the stereo mic where the one's pointing this way, one's pointing that way. They have this other microphone, which is like a mid-side microphone where it records what's in front of it. But then it records what's on either side on a separate track. I actually haven't messed with that one yet. But the Zoom H6 actually has an attachment for 2 more XLR microphone inputs. So this thing, you can literally plug in 6 XLR cables into this. And it's a handheld thing. It's a handheld recorder, so it's small, very portable, and it has a nice graphic display where you can check, you can see the recording level and you can adjust the levels, and it seemed perfect for what I want to do. And especially one of the other things I liked about it, I really like this about it. This is like a feature that, this is just awesome. Okay. On the top here where you can put the attachments, that's considered left and right. The left and right channels. Now, the other 4 XLR inputs that are on the main body of the recorder are numbered 1, 2, 3, and 4. So you have left and right, which is the top attachment piece, and then you have 1, 2, 3, and 4, which is 4 XLR inputs on the main unit. Now, with the left and right, whatever attachment you put on there, right, it records that onto obviously 2 tracks, left and right. It also can do this simultaneously, and this is a setting you can turn on or off, but I'm always going to keep it on. It will record a backup copy of each track, left and right, but the signal will be reduced by 12 dB. Now, this is genius because now you can feel comfortable cranking up the mic pre a little bit on the main left and right. You can crank it up nice and strong. And now if let's say the person talks really loud or there's a loud noise, and let's say the level goes way above 0 and it distorts, okay, well, no problem, because guess what? You have a backup recording that's 12 dB lower. So if there's one part on the main left and right tracks that actually distorts, in post-production, you can actually replace that distorted part with the backup recording, which is much lower volume, and it's not distorted. And of course, you definitely have to volume match these 2 signals later. But the point is, you'll have a copy of the recording that's 12 dB lower, so any time it went above 0 and distorted, you have a backup copy that's not distorted. This is just awesome. Now you don't have to freak out and have anxiety attacks when you're recording because you have a backup that's 12 dB lower. Now, the other 4 inputs on this thing, they do not have that backup feature, which is okay. It would be great if they did, but they don't. So anyway, the Zoom H6, and I know this is a very popular unit. A lot of people use it. A lot of people love it. The reviews are just awesome. It's a sturdy unit. It's kind of like a lot of like hard rubber on the outside, so there's not much handling noise. Like when you're handling it, it's quiet. Anyway, it's a great unit. So I went ahead, I bought it. I bought some of that 2 extra XLR attachment, and the price was fine. it's cheaper than other options. I did speak with Mark Johansson on the phone a few weeks ago, and he was saying there are other options, and we talked about some other units, but then you're getting into a lot more money, well, at least a little more money, and bigger units, and anyway, and so I just decided this H6 is so versatile that it'll work for me in many situations, and so I went ahead with this. By the way, let me just comment real quick on level matching. Like, if you're going to do that, like let's say you record left and right, and the main recording is good, but there's a few times where it got really loud and distorted, and the backup tracks are 12 dB lower in volume. So what you would do in post-production, you would take the main left and right recording, and let's say, and this is, you have to play with this, but this is one way to think about it. You could take the main left and right recording, and in your DAW or in your software, drop it down 6 dB. And then you take the backup recording and you bump it up 6 dB. And now you can carve out a piece from the backup recording and to replace the distorted part in the main recording, and it'll be the same level. Now, you can drop one down 6 and one up 6, or you can drop the main one down 9 and then bring up the backup 3. You just have to you have to realize the backup is 12 dB lower and the main recording is 12 dB louder than that, but the main recording is distorted, so you're going to want to bring that down because of the distorted pieces. So anyway, that's just level matching. That's actually, well, we're going to cover that in the podcast engineering school in a little different way, although that might be a good exercise too. Maybe we'll do that too. So anyway, the Zoom H6, I'm pretty happy with it. We just took it up to Denver for our Pause Your Life meetup because we hired a radio producer to make a little 3-episode pilot podcast for Pause Your Life. And the radio producer asked me, she said, look, if you have an extra recorder, just bring it to record, ambience, right? So I did. I brought it, and I had the little XY attachment on top. And what's cool with the XY attachment as well is you can set it so it's 90 degrees separation, or you can actually swivel each one and make it 120 degrees separation. So 120 degrees is a wider separation between left and right. It'll make the stereo spectrum a little wider. 90 degrees will be 90 degrees, and it'll be what it is, but at 120 will be even wider. So that's what we did. And anyway, I'm psyched for that Pause Your Life podcast. So Podcasters Society, here's something I haven't announced yet. This is kind of a big announcement here. So Podcasters Society is a community that was started, and it's run by Daniel J. Lewis, who's a previous guest on this show, and he also does a podcast called The Audacity to Podcast. He, as I've mentioned before, he's on my Mount Rushmore of podcast experts. He's one of the 4 faces up there. And what's great about Daniel, too, is he is so knowledgeable in the surrounding areas of podcasting, like websites, like social media, like affiliate marketing, like graphic design. He's actually a graphic designer, too. So he has wide and deep knowledge around podcasting, and of course, including podcasting. So he started this Podcaster Society, and this is a great community, and here's why. If you're into podcasting, you're probably part of a few Facebook groups that are for podcasters. One is called Podcasters Hangout. One is called Podcasters Community. Of course, Podcast Movement has their own Facebook group. Podfest Multimedia Expo has their own Facebook group, and those are just 4 of the big groups. There are others, and I'm part of others, and if I'm not mentioning your group, I'm sorry. I actually just don't have Facebook up. Now, all these Facebook groups are awesome. It's a great way to learn things. People post really cool things, and it's also a place where you can get help. One of the issues, though, is that probably every day there's someone who comes in there and says, "Hey, I want to start a podcast, and I don't know what mic to get. What's the best podcasting microphone?" And that's a loaded question because there is no best one. It depends on what you're doing, where you're doing it, how you're doing it, and all this. So, of course, a lot of people, members in the Facebook group, will chime in and answer and say certain things. And, of course, the next day, same thing. Oh, what's the best microphone? Or is this mic better than that mic? Or this and that. So you get a lot of questions from folks who have not even started a podcast. And they literally don't know anything. And another problem with that is, they'll ask an open-ended question, like, what's the best podcasting microphone? But then they'll get like 17 different answers. Someone will say, oh, the Blue Yeti's the best microphone. And other people will say, oh, the Blue Yeti's the worst microphone. And for someone who knows nothing, how are they supposed to decide? So it's kind of weird. I mean, in general, it is helpful. And in general, they are all good conversations. My point of bringing this up is that Podcasters Society is only for people who have actually launched their podcast. They're already launched. They're already going. They're doing it. They started. They have their setup. They bought their microphone. They launched. They're all done launching. Now it's just a matter of improving. And the group of people that are in this group are great for all different reasons. And Daniel is great at moderating and helping people understand. He answers all questions that no one else will answer or no one else can answer. So it's just wonderful. And the depth of what is discussed in this community is very deep. I mean, just they'll bring up things and they will drill down into something. It's really nice if you're sort of technical or you're sort of, you want to know certain things in depth. It's great. And you just don't get that on a Facebook group. I mean, you just don't. So I think it's great to be part of both. Facebook groups are awesome for what they're awesome for, and Podcasters Society is awesome for everything else. And so Daniel reached out to me, and he's doing something with his community. He's going to bring on experts. I think he's calling them community experts. Experts in different different areas of podcasting. So, marketing, social media, design. And so he asked me to come on as an expert in audio engineering, the audio engineering aspect of podcast production, which is exactly what this show's about, which is exactly what I love, which is exactly what my experience and knowledge are good for. So it seemed just like a great fit. And so him and I talked. And so now I am part of Podcasters Society, and I am active in the group, and I'm delivering one piece of content a month within that group, and it's great, and I just love it. And it's just the beginning. This just started, about a month ago, so we're still getting started and getting rolling, and he's going to have many experts in there, and so this Podcasters Society is becoming so valuable. It really is. Even my good friend Ralph Rivera, he's going to sign up. And so here's the thing about signing up. I'm going to have like an affiliate link. So you can sign up through me, and then I'll actually, earn a small sliver of what you're paying to Podcasters Society. So I will, in this post for this episode, I said episode, session. In the show notes for this session, number 49, I'm going to put a big fat affiliate link for you to click, and it'll bring you to the Podcasters Society website. Then you could check it out and look at it and see the pricing and see all the details. And if you do join, please join through my affiliate link so I can get credit for it and I can earn just, again, a little bit, but every little bit helps. I mean, on this show that I don't have any sponsors. So I'm only doing this show to support the Podcast Engineering School and the programs and courses that the school offers, which is coming along nicely. But every little bit helps, and I'm really happy to be partnering with Daniel in this way. I think this is going to be a great partnership for years to come. I mean, every day and every week, it just seems like podcasting is blowing up more and more. More people want to start production companies. More individuals want to start podcasts. More companies are realizing that podcasting is almost a necessity now. And it can help generate content and that you can leverage into your blog and your ebooks and your website. It's just insane how valuable a podcast is. And of course, then you're going to need podcast producers. Then you're going to need communities. So this industry is on a slow rise, and it is not stopping for a long, long time. It's not even going to slow down for a long time. We're still in the beginning of this. We really are. And it's just awesome. Even one of the students that just signed up for podcast engineering school, she manages comedians, and she manages other people as well. And she told me, she said, look, nowadays in the world of comedy, every comedian has to have a podcast. I mean, if you don't have a podcast, it's like, oh, you don't have a podcast? Oh, that's weird, right? Because now now every comedian has their own podcast. Why? Because podcasts are freaking awesome. So anyway, she's going to be learning how to produce podcasts and oversee podcast production, and she's going to offer it. And her service is going to be kick-ass. I don't know. There's just so many angles of how the podcasting industry is growing and how there's so much opportunity for you and I and everyone. And it's just great fun. It really is fun. To me, it's just a lot of fun. So Podcasters Society, happy to be part of it. Thank you, Daniel J. Lewis. And I'm happy to be in the group with all a bunch of cool people. Max Flight is in the group, and a lot of other people are in the group too. And so that's awesome. So Podcast Engineering School is starting April 4th. There will be future courses as well. The price is much lower right now, but it goes up on April 1st. So the whole thing with Podcast Engineering School is it will teach you how to produce podcasts at a professional level. These are the things we're going to cover in the course. And by the way, these are, even if you don't take the course, these are the areas of production that you can improve in. And you can, if you want to go, learn however you want to learn, buy books or watch YouTube videos. These are the areas in which you can up your game a lot, okay? The first area is audio fundamentals, electricity, digital in and out, digital to analog converters, phase, all kinds of stuff. Then there's hardware, right? Hardware in terms of computers, audio interfaces, microphones, mixers, outboard gear, recorders, tablets, mobile rigs. Then there's studio configuration. How do you connect all these things together? I mean, there's a lot of ways to connect things together. It depends on what you want to do and all that, but there's, soundproofing, hardware configurations. The next area is software and plugins. You got the multi-track DAWs, the stereo editors, the plugins, audio restoration. Then you have recording. Hello, recording's important. Signal flow, gain staging, recording levels, having multiple guests, overdubbing, pop filters, shock mounts, working the mic, boom arms, pre-recorded elements, recording on location. Yeah, we'll cover a few things. Next thing, connecting guests, right? Over the internet, sound checking them, their audio quality, recording multi-track, everything. The next one, listening exercises, because as I always say, it always comes down to your ears. It comes down to what you're hearing. And that the part of it is your ears, part of it are your monitors, your headphones or your speakers, however you're monitoring it. Next area is mixing. This is the big one. This is probably my favorite is, the mixing in post-production. How do you mix everything together and optimize it, optimize each thing separately and mix it together so it's awesome. Then, of course, you have editing. There are some advanced editing techniques and just, fundamental techniques that we're going to cover. I mean, there's so much you can do with editing and so much that can be messed up through editing and just sound weird. So how to avoid that. All right. Then, of course, there's mastering, that last step that almost no podcasters do because it's not actually 100% necessary, but it's a really good step. And of course, it's to produce podcasts on a professional level, you should have some mastering steps in there, which include plugins, loudness, multiband compression, limiting, tape emulation, exciters, all kinds of stuff. Then, of course, there's publishing, which we're going to touch on publishing. I mean, publishing is kind of easy. The different platforms to publish to, a little bit about podcast feeds and directories. Not too much on that because, there's a lot of other courses and places to get that information. Then, of course, there's the business aspect for those students who want to start their own podcast production companies. I'm going to give all my experience and talk about pricing, talk about marketing, talk about how to position yourself in the market, everything. And of course, the whole thing is interactive, a lot of Q&A, and you have direct access to me. You'll be able to watch the actual classes, review them later on, over and over, into the future. So Podcast Engineering School, I'm excited about it. I'm happy to be doing it online too, because that seems to work for everyone else. So anyhow, podcastengineeringschool.com, that's the website where you can find all the details. podcastengineeringschool.com. I hope you enjoyed this little mini episode. Next week, we're going to get back to the awesome guests and talking about equipment and workflow and processing and all that. In the meantime, you could check out our page on Facebook and all that stuff. If you have any questions, just email me. I hope you are having fun on your podcast production journey. Let me know if you have questions. And until next week, you know what to do. Yell it out right now yourself. Go. I didn't hear you. Sound great.
Walk away from me where, and you can't play that part so well. Why do you play it out on me now? You like to lose control where it's quite a feeling, isn't it? They're floating, drifting down now. You tell me that you found something better. How should I respond to that? It's a lie. I don't wanna hear it. What do you want me to say? It's a lie. I don't wanna hear it. You react some empathy. You change your attitude where you say I just don't get it now. You say your eyes so far away now. Gave up on me where some chance you gave me, gave away. You say I wouldn't understand now. You tell me that you found something better. How should I respond to that? Oh yeah, I say now it's a lie. I don't wanna hear it. What do you want me to say? It's a lie. I don't wanna hear it. You react so actively. I want you to know you will ever always be true. I gone over all we've been through. Doesn't seem that long a time now. Things we did still hold that meaning. And does it mean it's still the same? You're pushing me away. You walk your theories now where you're getting worked up on your now. You walk your way around somehow now. Yes, it hurts me now where that you don't talk to me now. Now that these worlds have split apart now. Tell me that you found something better. How should I respond to that? Oh yeah,